Hello and welcome to another episode of the Under the Dome podcast. I am your host. I am Ben Belden. Find me on Twitter at RealBBelton. Make sure that you're following the podcast on Twitter at UnderTheDome_ND. We got a lot of things to talk about, a little bit of Notre Dame basketball stuff that we'll lead with here, some big recruiting news and a couple things to keep an eye on, and then we're going to play a little bit of a game of good old-fashioned buy or sell. Obviously, we are talking about Notre Dame football in the buy or sell segment and talking about how, what we expect for this upcoming season now that spring practice is wrapped. And there are at least the start to some answers, if not answers altogether, about what this Notre Dame football team is going to look like in 2019. So I'm going to bring in my two guests today. I've got Mason Plummer on the line. Mason, how are you?
Doing great, man. How you doing?
Oh, I'm just hanging in there and getting ready for the stretch run down here in April and things. Mason is a writer at Slap the Sign, as I am as well. And then another writer at the Slap the Sign is Nathan Urbach. Nathan, how's it going out there on the West Coast?
It's getting hot already, man. I don't like it. We're already up to 90 degrees essentially. So you guys might be jealous, but I'm not.
Yeah, I was watching baseball in 40-degree weather today, man. I don't want to hear that.
It's been, pretty solidly 50, 60 degrees most of the time here in Ohio. Got a couple days into the 70s last week, but tomorrow's, I guess, supposed to be beautiful as well. So, but not 90. Let's just put it that way. But anyway, I want to make just a quick, little announcement here that my mother's dog, a French bulldog named Rudy, appropriately named for, a Notre Dame podcast, is sitting in the room with me, and he's a little antsy. So if there's weird noises coming, right now he's laying in one spot, which is good, but I can't guarantee that that's going to happen. So if there's weird noises or me shushing or something, listeners or you guys, whatever, just ignore and just keep talking. So anyway, before we get started, I want to make sure that we give a shout out to Electrasound, who has hooked me up with some of this audio equipment that I use to get this podcast off the ground. They're an audio company in Northeast Ohio, but they can service a variety of areas as well. If you're in the need for audio consulting, or if you have like an outdoor or indoor festival show, whatever, and you want their services, or if you just need equipment, go to electrasound.com. That's ELECTRI and then the word sound.com. That's the easiest way to get a hold of them, and they will help you out with your audio type needs. They've, like I say, helped me with this microphone, some cords, these headphones. Pretty much all of it is them. So I appreciate them. Wanted to make sure we shout them out to start the show. And with that, we're going to get started with the actual show part, talking about some Notre Dame hoops news. So one thing that we haven't really talked about on this podcast, specifically, or even in general with the Notre Dame basketball team, is the fact that DJ Harvey has transferred out of the Notre Dame program. I don't know. I found this a little bit surprising, but at the same time, not all that surprising, given that, I don't know. I think that given the way that the season went, I don't think it's particularly surprising. I think that there's a lot of people thinking, that this is a young man's team, and if you're already in your second year like DJ Harvey was, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe looking for a better opportunity, I suppose. I could be wrong about that, but you two guys are the guys that follow these types of things, so I'm going to start with you, Mason, and just kind of get your reaction to the DJ Harvey transferring news.
Yeah, so it's not really a surprise. Harvey struggled to find his way in the Notre Dame offense, both his freshman year and his sophomore year. He's a guy that likes to create his own shot, sometimes to a fault, and everybody who's followed Notre Dame basketball knows that Mike Brey plays very team-oriented basketball. Oftentimes making the extra pass and finding the open guy, and Harvey will never be a pass-first guy. He's always going to try to create his own shot. And it really seemed to fit in the Notre Dame offense. As a recruiter, I was super hyped about him coming to Notre Dame, as highly rated as he was, but it just wasn't really a fit. And I think it'll be good for both sides if they kind of part ways.
Nathan.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mason's pretty much spot on. And just to kind of echo a little bit about what he said and expand on it further, um, I think the injury probably had a little bit to do with this. I don't think he's the same player as maybe he was going to be or what we thought he was going to be coming out of high school. And coupled with that, obviously he did kind of play his own style of basketball that didn't really suit the Bray offense. So I think it's probably going to be good for both sides. I mean, obviously Notre Dame has to go out and land a few guys, or especially for next season if they want to compete like we all thought they might, with Harvey and other guys returning. But yeah, no, I mean, I think, it sucks because, he was maybe one of the top recruits that Bray landed in his tenure at Notre Dame, but I don't think he was ever really going to live up to that billing.
So speaking of, not competing, and it's well documented that Notre Dame basketball had its struggles this year, and it was almost humorous isn't the word, but it was almost like you just had to roll your eyes if one more thing couldn't have gone their way. I don't know. So, but Mike Bray has said that, he essentially wants to bring this group back next year. Now, obviously, DJ Harvey transferring changes that a little bit, but basically the core of the team is back. But Notre Dame, especially with the news of Harvey transferring, is looking to add maybe one or two guys via just, regular recruiting and or, the grad transfer type market. And we'll start with the grad transfer type market. There's a young man who, and you guys can talk about him more than I can, certainly, but Justin Pierce from William and Mary. What can you tell our listeners? And Nathan, we'll start with you on this one about Justin Pierce.
Yeah, so I mean, he visited a few weeks ago. He's a 3-year starter essentially at William and Mary. Each year got better. Not maybe the traditional Mike Bray guy where he's a terrific shooter per se. I mean, he's kind of around that 35 to 40% 3-point range, but it's been kind of a fluctuating thing. Like his first year wasn't great. Next year was really good, and then this past year he kind of became more of a slasher. But he would replace DJ Harvey pretty well with the fact that same position and everything. And I think this year he averaged around 15 and 9. The 9 being rebounds, of course. But he visited a few weeks ago and looks like he's down to North Carolina, Notre Dame, and then I believe Michigan actually. And from all reports, seems to be that Notre Dame is right in the thick of it, or if not leading. So it'd be a really nice pickup for next year as a grad transfer.
Mason, do you have anything to add to that?
I just, Notre Dame's obviously put their name out in the running for Justin Pierce, and anytime that Notre Dame basketball is mentioned with the names of the elites of the recent years, Michigan and Michigan and North Carolina, when it comes to a transfer, it's a good thing. And I think landing Pierce would be really great for this team, as they really need somebody to make a difference. And Pierce is a good shooter, and as well as Nathan said, he's a slasher and could easily replace Harvey in the Notre Dame offense.
All right. In addition to that, a couple regular transfers on the market. I'll just name off some of these guys, and I'll let you guys kind of go with it. We've got a freshman out of Oakland, Braden Norris, R.J. Cole from Howard, and then Joey and Sam Hauser, both from Marquette. I'm not familiar with any of these guys, to be honest with you, other than seeing their names thrown around on Twitter and things. Mason, let's start with you on this one. Are there any of these guys that you particularly like as far as what they'll add, or do you think which ones do you think might actually end up at Notre Dame?
I'm really high on Braden Norris. This is a guy that's a prototypical shooter, like a spot-up shooter, and he had a solid freshman season at Oakland, shooting almost 50% from 3, and Notre Dame really lacked a consistent 3-point threat. We thought, or at least everyone thought, I thought myself included, that Nate Lachef could be much more of a lights-out shooter this season, and that he was not. TJ Gibbs was not nearly as good as he has been in the past from 3. And I think Notre Dame needed to bring in a guy that can be consistent from 3, someone they can kick it out to on drives like TJ Gibbs, and I think Norris could be that guy for Notre Dame.
Nathan, what do you got to add?
Yeah, I mean, with Norris, you have a guy that's obviously going to sit out a year, so he doesn't necessarily have to sit behind TJ Gibbs or apprentice hub. I mean, he can come in, have 2 to 3 years of eligibility after, once he's eligible to play. And I think he's just a really good role player. And whether that's as, part of the starting five or not, I mean, anytime you have a guy coming off the bench that can shoot, 45 plus from 3-point range, that's something good to have. And he's a ball handler. He's a point guard for Howard this year, started 30 games. So he has some experience. And I think something that, could really help this team. Some other guys, obviously, that, we didn't mention yet was, RJ Cole from, forgot where he's from. Where is he from? Howard.
Howard.
Yes. Yeah. So not necessarily a traditional Notre Dame, school that he's coming from, but a guy that's averaged over 20 points a game. Not a tremendous 3-point shooter, but if you average over 20 points a game, I mean, you have some good stuff going on with your game there. Probably was just overmatched against his or I should say, he was the guy that overmatched against his competition, Matt Howard. So moving into like those Power 5 schools is probably a good notion for him. He is entering the NBA draft without an agent though, so it's possible he leaves early. But a lot of schools are in on him. And then obviously Mason can probably talk about the Hausers a little bit, but I'm not sure Notre Dame's heavily in on them. I think they'd like to be, but I don't know how much interest there is going to be on their side with Notre Dame.
Yeah, they're an interesting one. They said they're willing to transfer, but I don't know if they're the prototypical guys that Notre Dame's going to want to go after, as it's both of them. It's not just the one. It's both Sam and Joey Hauser from Marquette. It looks like Wisconsin is heavily favored at the moment. It'll be interesting to follow. Both guys are solid, and both guys individually will be guys that Notre Dame want to look at. But bringing in both brothers would be interesting. Not exactly sure how Notre Dame fits with them, but Nathan, what do you have to add about that?
All right, so we're going to put just kind of a bow on Notre Dame basketball. We're going to move on to a little bit of Notre Dame football recruiting. But before I do, SeatGeek is a ticket search engine that never loses the sight of the fan experience. Simply go to their website, type in the name of a team, and choose the date you're looking to attend. SeatGeek will present you with a graphic chart of the stadium, little dots, green is good, red, not so good. You can choose your seats based on that system and get the best value. Apply the coupon code TheLoopSports, that's all one word, TheLoopSports at checkout, and you'll take $20 off your first purchase with SeatGeek. So obviously, if you're going by yourself, you can go darn near for free, or if you're going with somebody else, you obviously can take about, just about half of your ticket price off, depending on what game you're going to. You have no excuse not to go and root for your favorite team. Just use the code TheLoopSports at checkout and have a great time on us. Thank you to SeatGeek for partnering us with us here at The Loop Sports. And one thing that I didn't do at the start of the show, guys, I guess, is just make sure that I gave a shout out to the fact that we are the Under the Dome podcast, but we are partnered with The Loop Sports. I forgot to kind of mention them. If you're looking at our logo, our logos are kind of indicates that, I suppose. But the Loop Sports have been great. We're excited about that partnership moving forward. So I wanted to make sure that I checked those guys or shouted those guys out as well. So moving on a little bit to some football recruiting, which is kind of Nathan's wheelhouse, but Mason has, gotten in on kind of a little bit of the fun with recruiting in the last, weeks and months, I suppose. Two recent commitments to Notre Dame football that I think just about anyone that's a Notre Dame football fan can be really excited about, and even I, who am not a person who follows Notre Dame recruiting particularly closely, can be excited about as well. In the social media age, I guess it's easier to follow some of these guys, but it seems as if, people are saying that Jordan Johnson, wide receiver, is the best Notre Dame wide receiver that's been recruited since probably like Michael Floyd, I've heard people say. And then the other one, a defensive end outside linebacker type person, edge rusher, I guess you should call him, Jordan Botelho. Both guys in the 2020 class that are just going to make a big impact. Let's go with Nathan on this one. And just what can you tell me about these guys, and how excited should Notre Dame football fans be about these two guys that Notre Dame's picked up this past week?
So I've been looking a lot, and wait, would you say Nathan or Mason?
Did I say? I think I said Nathan, but I don't actually remember, to be honest with you.
Nathan, go for it. I'll go after you.
Oh, no, you're good. I was just gonna say, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, Ben. Even if you weren't trying to, I mean, both guys are highly ranked, and two of the most highly ranked guys in Notre Dame's landed under Kelly overall, especially at those specific positions. I'm pretty sure that Jordan Johnson is the highest ranked guy, at least according to 24/7 Sports, that they've landed at wide receiver under Kelly. And one of the top guys, if you include like all the different recruiting ranking systems that they've landed since Michael Floyd. Speedster, but also has some size. He's, 6'1.5", 6'2", probably. I wouldn't say that he's necessarily Kevin Austin in terms of the physicality that he plays with, but I think that he's kind of that speed threat that they're lacking right now in a guy that's more physically built, if that makes sense. And then with Botello, I mean, he's by far the best defensive end they've landed, at least from a recruiting standpoint. Obviously, Julian Aquara and Khalid Kareem have turned out to be guys that are, they're terrific college pass rushers. But from a recruiting standpoint, Botello's the best guy they've landed since the Aaron Lynch, Stephon Tuitt days. So I think Notre Dame fans have a lot to be excited about, and these guys should be, if they're not immediate impact players, they might be able to be, unless there's just too much on the depth chart ahead of them.
Mason?
Yeah, so look at the first Jordan Johnson. He's above size for the outside wide receiver position. He's a little bit lean. I'd like to see him put on some weight, but just so he can get some more after the catch or just be able to challenge for 50-50 balls more. But he is one of the best wide receiver recruits Notre Dame has landed under Kelly, ever, really. I just hope it turns out and works out for him. Notre Dame has lacked a true big man like a Michael Floyd or something like that. Miles Boykin was all right, but he didn't blow anybody out of the water or anything like Michael Floyd did when he was in his time at Notre Dame. And then moving on to the other Jordan Botello, I've looked a lot into him just the past couple weeks, and his commitment was great to see, as Washington was initially favored. But, he, as Nathan said, he's the best rusher, purely pass rusher that Notre Dame's had since Aaron Lynch, and we all know what happened with Aaron Lynch. Unfortunately, I would have loved to see him play 4 years in Notre Dame. But Jordan Botello should be unreal at Notre Dame. And, I'm just really excited about both of these guys overall.
In terms of the 2020 class, it seems like, Notre Dame, depending on what recruiting service I guess you go with, was in the, somewhere around the 15 range as far as recruiting classes were concerned for the 2019 class. However, I think certain guys were underrated, and it was a class, and I got to tip my hat for Nathan telling me this, but I agree that, this was a class that, fit Notre Dame needs really well. So those rankings, kind of don't really matter because Notre Dame got what they needed from that class, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So the 2020 class, however, and I don't have the rankings in front of me, but got to be pretty far up there. And this seems like a class that's off to a tremendous start. Mason, how I don't know, how do you feel about this 2020 class? Is this one of the better ones that you can remember, I suppose?
Yeah, I definitely think it's one of the better classes I can remember, especially as far as getting top tier recruit guys. We kind of touched on that the best rushers Notre Dame's seen in recent years being Julian Aquara and Dalen Hayes, Clay Kareem, those kind of guys. But those guys were developmental projects that it's more of a testament to the Notre Dame coaching staff. They were the 4-star, 5-star guys coming out of high school. These are guys that are already developed and that can walk into this Notre Dame team and really make an impact. And imagine what they can do with the development that we've seen with Aquara and Kareem. So, I think this 2020 class could shape out to be one of the better ones we've seen under Kelly, possibly the best one, with a couple more additions. I want to see a couple more additions at linebacker, possibly at the corner positions. The offensive line already looks great, but adding Chris Tyree or Tyrek Murphy at the running back would really make for a complete class as well.
Nathan, what say you?
I like to look at recruiting classes and duos. I think a lot of years coaches will strike out at a certain position, but it's always it's not always because sometimes it's sort of intentional, I should say. So like last year at wide receiver, they landed Abdur Rahman out of Illinois and then Cam Hart out of Maryland. And everybody was kind of like, well, what are they doing at wide receiver? And then this year they're in on a lot of top-notch wide receivers. They just landed Jordan Johnson, AJ Henning from Illinois. A lot of people think Notre Dame is right in the mix for him. Jalen McMillan, who's another top 50 receiver out of California. Michael Redding, that's out of IMG Academy. Like they're in on these guys, and people realize that. And so like last year, they sort of made this. I don't know, like they sort of just like didn't treat the wide receiver position as an immediate need after landing like 4 to 5 guys the previous year, and then knowing what their 2020 recruiting class might look like just because of what they were in on early. So I really think that this year. Like I said, wide receiver, and then what Mason touched on with running back, only landing Kyron Williams last year. Really got to step up and get a guy like Tyree, Murphy, possibly Kyle Edwards out of Louisiana is another guy to keep in mind. And then the Notre Dame staff is also high on guys like Juton McLean out of Ohio, Demetrium Tranium, if I say that right. He has kind of an interesting name to say, but he's also out of Ohio. The staff really likes. So with Lance Taylor now as the running backs coach, they're in on some running backs. They need to land some running backs. But no, I really want to see how this class ends up being, not necessarily in terms of ranking standpoint, but how it stacks up to like what they struck out on last year and what they land this year. And so far that looks to be a good thing. In terms of comparison.
All right. Well, we have reached like the 22-minute mark of this podcast, which, is good, I suppose. So I'm going to move right along. I'm going to get to this next ad real quick, and then we're going to come back and we're going to play some Notre Dame football buy or sell here in a hot second. But I don't know what the weather's like where you guys are, but here in Ohio, I mean, it's 6:00 as we record this on Saturday night, and it's like somebody turned the lights off. I started this podcast, recording with the lights off, and, for people that are watching on YouTube, probably look a little bit dark. I apologize, but that's all right. So anyway, 26 Shirts is another partnership that we are excited about for the month of April. They sell cool t-shirts backed by an even cooler mission, which is helping people in need. And just about every 2 weeks, they create an exclusive t-shirt for $25, and a portion of the proceeds from each sale goes to help a person or family in need. And the organization is heavily involved in community outreach. The artists that provide these shirts they get a percentage of the sale, and the other part of that shirt goes to impact a life. So if you go to the 26 Shirts website, which is 26shirts.com, you can find some cool, I guess, limited edition shirts, and they've got primarily some Chicago shirts on there, but they're kind of branching out and things as well. So go to 26shirts.com and check out what they've got and help support a good cause. So we're very happy to have 26 Shirts on board with us as well. Okay, so as I teased a couple times now, and I think this is going to be kind of fun, we're going to play buy or sell with some, and I've prepared like 7, I guess, topics of conversation. We might not get to all of them, just depending on how long we go. I guess I should stop rambling, but basically, we'll start with Mason. We'll go to Nathan, and then if you guys have, and then I'll weigh in. But if you guys have, I don't know, we have a tie, I will break that tie, I suppose. So basically, how this is going to work is, I've prepared just a couple of things as far as, stats from last year that I want to get an indication on what you guys think as far as, are these stats going to improve? Are they going to be lesser, I suppose, because other areas will improve, and so on and so forth. But so I'll just go ahead and I'll throw this first one out here, and then we'll get Mason's answer. So Ian Book, quarterback, Notre Dame, good guy, threw for about 262 yards per game. Last year, he played in 10 games, so that's like 2,600 yards for the season. Assuming he's healthy for 12 regular season games, if he stays on that pace, he'll be between 3,100 and 3,200 yards on the season for 12 regular season games. buy or sell, Mason, that yards per game at 262, or the total yardage at about 3,100. Buy or sell that Ian Book will be higher than that in 2019.
I'm absolutely buying it. Notre Dame lost a lot on the defense, and they're going to have to score points in order to stay in games, probably about 40 points a game. And a lot of that is going to come through Ian Book. They return a lot of the wide receiver depth that they had last season, just losing Miles Boykin. I'm really high on Cole Kmet. Jafar Armstrong is great coming out of the backfield. I expect a big season from Chase Claypool, and Chris Fink is always slept on, but he's bound to have a great season as well. So with guys like Michael Young and Kevin Austin also coming into the mix, I fully believe that. I think Ian Book will average about 300 yards a game, actually, with some games like Louisville probably push 400 or 500 yards. So that could make it up for a tough game like Georgia. So, yeah, I absolutely believe that Ian Book will surpass 260 yards a game.
Nathan?
Yeah, no, I'm buying it as well. Partly for what Mason said. I mean, I do think that the offense is going to have to be better than last year. Defense was obviously able to carry him a little bit more. And I think the offense is going to have to be kind of what the defense was last year in order to get back to the college football playoff. But another thing I want to touch on right there is with Jafar Armstrong. I think with Dexter Williams gone to the NFL and Jafar being the main guy out of the backfield, I think he could catch 40 to 50 balls if they include him in the offense properly. And I think that's going to help with the yards per game, just because he adds a different dynamic that Dexter Williams wasn't able to provide in terms of catching ability. So for me, that's a big thing. And then same thing with what Mason said about the tight ends. I really think that this year might be that year where we get back to tight end U in terms of a statistical standpoint and not just a draft standpoint.
Okay, both of you are kind of stealing some of my thunder for later on, but that's okay. As far as questions I have, the one thing, I mean, this was an easy one to lead off with. I think this is a easy buy. The one thing, I guess, I agree with everything that you guys said. The one thing I think that I'll add that's a little bit different is that I think with the offensive line being more mobile this year, one thing, and they talked about it if you watch the spring game, they being the announcers, they talked about that this year, the screen game might be back. It's been a couple years since, we've seen the jailbreak screen, for instance, run effectively, or, the screens out of the backfield for, Jafar Armstrong, like Nathan kind of mentioned. So I think that those types of things and a more mobile offensive line is going to let them do more things where, it's not a big, a deep pass by any means, but you might get some more yardage in the passing game because of that as well. Moving on. We just talked a little bit about Dexter Williams and Jafar Armstrong replacing him kind of as the main guy. Dexter Williams had 995 rushing yards in 8 games last year. I guess that was 9 games. I lied. 9 games last year. Coming up just short of 1,000, obviously. Will Jafar Armstrong, or I guess any other Notre Dame running back, eclipse the 1,000-yard mark this season? Buy or sell? Someone does eclipse that 1,000-yard mark, and we'll start with you, Mason.
All right, so I'm going to sell Jafar Armstrong reaching 1,000 yards rushing, but I would hypothetically absolutely buy that he's going to produce 1,000 yards, all-purpose yards. He's going to be a big force out of the backfield, but I don't think that he's the traditional guy you're going to give it to 15, 20 times a game as you would with Dexter Williams. So all-purpose yards, absolutely, but as far as purely running or rushing for 1,000 yards, I'm going to sell that.
Nathan?
I'm going to buy it. I was listening to the Irish Illustrated podcast, I think this was about a week ago now, and they were kind of going over some numbers. And I think it's like something where if he has 200 carries and runs for about like 5.7 yards a carry, which I think is more than capable from a college running back of his caliber, then that's about that 1,000-yard mark. And then add in, obviously, with all-purpose yards. I know that wasn't the question, but I definitely think he goes, into that and close to like that maybe 1,400 yard mark when it comes to all-purpose yards. And I think he gets, he's around that 950 to 1,100 yard mark when it comes to just rushing. So I'm going to buy it and say he goes over by just a little bit.
So kind of to your point there, Nathan, I have these stats in front of me. Dexter Williams, 6.3 yards per carry last year, and Jafar Armstrong only carried the ball 72 times, but 5.3 yards per carry last year. And people talked about how Notre Dame's running game wasn't very good last year. Assuming it'll be better, I think I'm on board with what you're saying. However, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to sell this and kind of break the tie and kind of go with Mason. But this really could go either way. And the reason I'm selling it is because I just think that guys like Tony Jones Jr. and Jameer Smith are going to come in and take touches away from Jafar Armstrong. I don't really think he's going to get to 200 attempts. I think, he's going to touch the ball, 10 to 15 times running it, and then another 5 to 7 times, I suppose, on passing type plays. So I just don't know that he's going to have the amount of rushing attempts to get to 1,000 yards. But I think all of us are in agreement that he's going to be darn close. So moving right along, because I want to keep this moving. Buy or sell, Mason. Chase Claypool is Notre Dame's leading receiver in receptions next year.
Chase Claypool leading the team in receptions, that's the question?
Yes.
I'm going to sell that too. I think the ball is going to be spread around a lot. I don't necessarily see Chase Claypool getting 5 or 7 catches a game. I couldn't tell you who is going to lead the team in receptions, but my gut feeling is that it's not going to be Claypool. I've never been huge on Chase Claypool. I do think he'll have a breakout season this year, but leading the team in receptions, I'm going to sell it.
Nathan?
That's another one I'm actually going to buy. Last year he had about 50. I think he had exactly 50.
Exactly 50.
And was it Chris Fink had
49?
Yep. So they were right there, pretty close. Without Miles Boykin in the fixture, and I think Chase Claypool's coming off his best spring at Notre Dame. I think he's going to be like the most dynamic threat for them. Fink's still going to get his, with in the middle of the field and different things like that. We all know how dynamic he can be as just a strict route runner and different things like that. But I think it's college football, and it's 2019 modern college football. You have to throw the ball down the field in order to win. I think Claypool's going to be the best guy for that.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Nathan on this one. So this is kind of fun. I'm going to go with Nathan on this one and buy that that was a new one. Chase Claypool will be the leading receiver in receptions this year because, to me it seems like it's Claypool outside, it's Fink in the slot, and then it's just everybody else, I suppose. And I think just because, everybody else, Claypool might only end up with 50 to 60 catches again, but I think, Miles Boykin led Notre Dame last year with 59 catches. So I'm going to buy that one, but, I certainly, these, like I say, these were two of the harder ones, I think, to think about. All right. So, we're like 1-1-1. One we all three agreed on, and then the other two, it was 2-1 on each of them. So this is kind of fun. A couple more here. Notre Dame tight ends caught 56 total passes last year. So that's spread across something like 36 from Alizé Mack, and Cole Kmet had like 15, and then Nick Wisher and Brock Wright had, a handful each. Buy or sell that Notre Dame exceeds that number from the tight end group, Mason?
Well, I'm going to have to sell it just because I don't trust anybody else catching passes other than Cole Kmet. That Brock Wright has almost been exclusively a blocking tight end. Tommy Tremble has hardly seen the ball. And then I haven't heard anything about George Takich. So when it comes to catching the ball, I do think Cole Kmet's going to have a breakout season, but it's pretty much just going to be him catching the ball. So without much help, I don't see him going over you say 56?
56.
I don't see him exceeding that now, but I'm selling it.
All right, Nathan.
I feel like such a homer because I'm buying everything, but this is another one I want to buy. And I actually kind of disagree with Mason to a certain extent. I've heard glowing reports about Brock Wright and how he's changed his body this year, and how even though he came in as more of an inline blocker, he's pass catching, or he's showing the ability to be a decent pass catcher for them. So I think this might be the year that they're able to finally go to their tight end format more often. Now, I still think Brock Wright as an end-line blocker is what he's going to be used as mostly, but I could see him catching, maybe 3 or 4 touchdowns because he's in the red zone. And I just think that he's become a little bit more athletic, which will provide, some different options for them, and maybe even surprise some teams. So I'm going to go with, and then obviously Tommy Tremble and George Takis might get a few catches here and there. And I think Tommy Tremble specifically has maybe a niche role with the team as well. So I'm going to go ahead and say that they get around 60 and go a tad over, but not too terribly over.
Man, I almost don't know what to say about this one, and I kind of just not want to answer, so we just stay tied because that's fun. Golly. I think you could see Cole Kmet catch probably 40 to 45 balls at least this year. And given that even Nick Wisher and Brock Wright caught together 6 or 7 last year, that gets you pretty close to that 56 number. So I'm going to go ahead and buy this because I just think that Ian Book, you got to remember, I suppose, that Brandon Wimbush played quarterback for the first 3 games of the season. And without knowing exactly the numbers, the catches for the tight ends went up when Ian Book started playing quarterback. So just the fact that Ian Book is going to be obviously the quarterback, knock on wood, I suppose, with health and everything for the duration of the season, I think they'll exceed 56, but it won't be by much. Golly,
I will say one thing I've been hearing, though, that kind of makes me almost want to stay sell on this is I've been hearing that Chip Long has been having to tell Ian Book to throw the ball to Cole Kmet. He's open a lot in scrimmages and the blue and gold game and, so on and so forth. But he just doesn't look to the middle of the field for his tight end as much as he should. And that kind of scares me a little bit with Ian Book more so than it does with the tight ends. And I think that's where Mason's at to a certain extent. It's not that he doesn't believe in Cole Kmet specifically. It's just that there might not be enough touches to go around with the young receivers and different things like that might play a role. So I could totally see it going under. I just think kind of on the way that you were talking, Ben, where I think that Cole Kmet will end up getting around that 40 mark, and then I think all the other guys combined will get close to that 20 mark.
Yeah.
Just because I think they are better than they were last year.
Yeah, I read those same kind of things. I guess that kind of influenced my decision a little bit. I didn't reference it, but yeah, I did notice that I was in attendance for the blue and gold game, and Cole Kmet was hit a couple times, but he was open down the field multiple times, and it's just not a guy Ian Book looks for, I guess. He's looking for the boundary receiver. He's looking for a guy on the slot running across just past the linebackers. So it's something he has to work on, but yeah, I'm still going to stick with selling for the tight ends.
Okay. I got 3 more, and I think we got pretty much the perfect amount of time to cover all 3 of them. So here we go. Right now, if we're keeping score, it's Nathan 2, Mason 1, and as far as who I agree with, and all of us 1. I think. I don't know. I could be wrong. Notre Dame defense had 34 sacks last year. I'm just going to go with it. And I don't know how I didn't realize this, but they were led in sacks by Jerry Tillery, which I don't know. Given all of the credit that the defensive ends get, you would have thought it would have been, Aquara or Hayes or Khalid Kareem or somebody like that. Obviously, it makes a little bit of sense because those guys get so much attention that, Tillery, got a lot of one-on-ones, and he's a good pass rushing defensive tackle. But I digress. So 34 total sacks. That's defensive line. That's linebackers. I think Coney and Tranquil each had about 3. Will Notre Dame, buy or sell, exceed... Let me rephrase this question. Buy or sell Notre Dame exceeding that number in 2019? Let's go with Mason.
Yeah, I'm buying that purely on the fact that Aquara, Kareem, and Hayes, the 3 of them are the three of the best that you're going to see at Notre Dame or any program in the country really as a whole. And with the amount of quarterback pressures alone that Aquara had last season that didn't turn into sacks, it's almost ridiculous when you look at the stats. And I think I know Tillery led the team in sacks, and his presence is going to be lost with Kurt Heinrich is not nearly the same kind of guy as Tillery. But with the pressure Notre Dame's going to have off the edge, it's almost going to be relentless with you're sitting a guy with Dalen Hayes' talent who's completely reinvented himself in this offseason. So with Kareem and Aquara out there, and with Dalen Hayes coming in on third downs and stuff like that, I absolutely believe that they'll surpass that sack mark.
Nathan?
Yeah, it's funny. I almost wanted to sell this one, even though how good we know that their rush linebackers are, simply because of Jerry Tillery, and I think they're not going to get the same level of pass rush productivity out of their interior defensive line. But it is really crazy with how good we know Khalid Kareem and Julian Aquara are specifically, but yet combined last year, they had like less than 10 sacks or just around 10 sacks as a duo. And I think that probably doubles at the very least. I think that Julian Aquara is going to cement himself as a first-round pick, and Khalid Kareem could be right around that same range, maybe a second-round guy just because maybe he doesn't show the same level of versatility, at least as a pass rusher. And then add on the fact that I think Dalen Hayes, like Mason said, has reinvented himself. I mean, he's always been solid at Notre Dame, but I think he's finally getting to the point where he might be like a legitimate pass rush option. Adi Ogundeji last year towards the end of the season, I mean, he might have been their best player in the Clemson game, to be completely honest with you. And, I mean, him as your backup to Kareem, he's only going to spell those guys. And then on top of that, I mean, if you really want to go even deeper than that, I think you have guys like Jameer Jones, if he doesn't end up redshirting, Ovi Agufo, if he maybe gets, I just think that his ability as an athlete, if he gets into games, maybe in like garbage time situations against, second team offensive linemen or something like that during a blowout, I think he might be able to make some plays. Justin Adamalola, I think can make some plays in limited time. And then I'm not going to discount the fact that I think that MTA and Jason Adamalola and guys like that have some pass rushing ability where guys are going to be so fixated on Kareem, Aquara, Dalen Hayes that those guys will have some room to work in the middle of the offensive line.
I'll make this as quick as I can. Like, I was tempted to sell this too because Notre Dame's defense is going to look a little bit different this year. Questions at corner, inexperience at cornerback a little bit outside of Troy Pride. Obviously, the safeties are pretty good, but inexperience, I guess, even at linebacker and inexperience up the middle. I think teams are going to try to run the ball against Notre Dame quite a bit. I think Notre Dame, teams are going to try to keep Notre Dame's offense off the field quite a bit. But I ultimately am going to buy this with you guys because I think Notre Dame is going to be able, with their good offense, get up on some teams, force teams into a lot of passing situations. And, there's been, and Notre Dame did this a little bit last year where they went with, on especially like extreme nickel situations with, they went with Aquara and Hayes together and with Kareem and Tillery, which was 4 great pass rushers. This year you could go Aquara, Hayes, Ade Ogundeji could move inside maybe to pass rush and take Heinrich off the field, for instance. And Kareem as well. So I think they're going to have a similar, you could even bring in an Adamaloa twin in that group as well. So I think ultimately when you consider 34 sacks, that's, less than 3 per game. I think Notre Dame gets at least 3 per game sacks. So I'm going to buy over 34 in 13 games, assuming, they go to a bowl game. So last two. And this one was Nathan's idea. This is the 11 interceptions last season for Notre Dame. So buy or sell, and they were led by Jalen Elliott, who had 4. Buy or sell, Notre Dame exceeding that 11 interception mark this year.
I'm going to buy it.
Yeah.
I see the Notre Dame safety group. This is the pairing of Gilman and Elliott is one of the best we've seen in a long time. And I think Gilman had 2 last season, could have had more, and then Elliott had 4. So you say Elliott gets his 4 again. Gilman should have had more. Give him 4 or 5. And then that's only asking for 1 or 2 of Troy Pride, Tariq Bracy, Houston Griffith. So between the 3 of them at the cornerback position, you're bound to have an underthrown ball at some point. So I'm going to buy that. I think it's totally possible they exceed 11. I think there will be a lot of turnovers that the defense forces that will get the offense into great positions this year. and I think a lot of those would be interceptions.
Nathan?
I'm going to buy it because of two things. And one of them's kind of negative. Obviously, with Julian Love there, he wasn't tested a lot. And I think the more you test guys, the more interceptions you're going to throw, but the more yards you're actually going to gain as an offense as well, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think guys like Houston Griffith, Tariq Bracy, guys like that, when they play, they're going to get tested more than a guy like Julian Love did. And so they'll be able to force some turnovers because of a good play here and there, but they'll also get beat more. And then the second reason, I think, is just because of the pass rush.
Yeah.
I wanted to throw this out there when we were talking about the pass rush, but they put on a freaking clinic during the blue and gold game, and that might be one of the best offensive lines they play all year, and it was their own offensive line. So guys are going to be rushing the passer. Opposing quarterbacks are going to have to throw quickly. They're going to be rushed into to some bad decisions. So I think that's going to force like linebackers, safeties, and then obviously the corners to turn on some balls. So part of it's negative, part of it's obviously a positive. So I think they'll probably get close to like 15 interceptions as a team. But it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to have a better secondary overall.
I'm going to buy this as well. So all three of us are in agreement. I don't want to talk too long about this because you guys made great points. But the one thing that I will add is that Notre Dame has kind of made a point of talking about, Brian Kelly talked about press coverage a little bit more. They're throwing some of that in. And, if you've read that, like Troy Pride, for instance, was struggling against Chase Claypool in the spring, there were some reports about that. It's because they're trying some of this more press coverage and, to kind of go along with their pass rush. If you don't give them dink and dunk throws, then the pass rush can get there easier. If the pass rush is getting there, the ball's coming out quicker. Obviously, time for more interceptions, deflections, that type of thing. I think you could see a couple like defensive end interceptions from this group as they continue to evolve. So I think, this is going to be a more than 11 total interceptions, so I'll buy that. All right, last one. And this is, I don't know, we probably could have done a whole podcast about this one, but I'll ask us to kind of keep it brief, I suppose. Buy or sell, Notre Dame wins more than 9 games this year. Mason.
I'm going to buy that. I think the offense is just going to be too good, along with the pass rush and of the defense and then the safety play. I think it makes up for the lacking experience. There's not a lack of talent, but a lack of experience, in-game experience at the linebacker position. So I have Notre Dame. Well, the Vegas line's 9.5. I have them at 10-2, with a solid win in a bowl game to make that like 11-2, I guess. I think this is a 10-win team. They're too good to not be. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, 10-win team for me.
Nathan?
So if I buy this one, I buy every single one, which is just, it's horrible, but whatever. I'm going to buy it as well, partly for what Mason said. I think I really think that this team has a lot of similarities to last year, but they're kind of just flip-flopped. I think that the defense is going to be good, but not great. And I think the offense is going to be outstanding. And last year was flip-flop. The offense was good, but not great. And the defense was outstanding. And I think that either way you spin it, that could be a winning formula. So if they can get to that 40-point per game mark that they have never reached, at least in recent years, and that's what college football is going to, if they can get to that 40-point mark, and I think that they can, then I think that they're a 10-win team. Only thing that gives me a little bit of pause is the schedule with how many, all their tough games outside of USC seem to be on the road this year with Michigan, Georgia, and Stanford. So that gives me a little pause because I think they could easily lose 2 of those games. And then you never know if they're going to like have a hiccup against Virginia Tech, whoever, Boston College maybe. If you give me the bowl game included, I think it's 100% yes, but I'm still going to buy it as 10-2 during the regular season.
Right, and you guys both did this anyway, so I think I meant this question to be a regular season type one. I'm going to buy it as well. And Nathan, to your point, like, if you're buying all of these things, I think you have to buy more than 9 wins this season. So I don't know, but anyway, I don't know. You guys pretty well said it. I should have let myself go first on one of these. But I just think that the defense will be good enough. I know people are concerned, and I know that and there's reason to be concerned. I get that. But I think, when you read things about the defense and how they're going to do things differently, one thing that they said that they were going to do a little differently this year is, last year they were just trying to funnel everything into, Tavon Coney and Drew Tranquil to clean up there in the middle. This year they're maybe like rushing in the middle a little bit more, pinching those gaps and letting those, athletic, but not necessarily like the real physical attacking linebackers that, I almost used the word thumper, but that's not what I want for Tavon Coney and Drew Tranquil, and let them go sideline to sideline a little bit. So I think the defense is going to be good enough, and the pass rush is just going to be so good, I think, that this is going to be a team that wins. I'll go as far to say 11-1. I don't know that they'll necessarily repeat the same type of, fortuitous bounces that they had in years past, but I don't know. I think this team will be in the college football mix late into the season, and we'll see what happens in games, Georgia, Michigan, and Stanford. That Stanford game might, as it has in years past, mean college football playoff contention or not. We'll see. So I'm going to go ahead and buy, and we'll just kind of leave it there. So anything else for the good of the order, guys, that we didn't talk on?
I think we hit it all.
Good stuff. Same with you, Nathan?
I think for the most part we hit it all. We can't talk about everything in a single podcast. So
Yes. So this was a good one. I had fun doing this one in particular. So listeners, if you checked us out on YouTube and you watched this video, or you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, whatever it is, thank you. If you find this somewhere and you want to find it somewhere else so you can listen in different ways, just check out the Under the Dome Twitter. There's a link in the bio. It'll send you to a nice little place where you can click all the rest of the links and stuff. So that's at Under the Dome _ND. You can find mine. You can find that Twitter or me at RealB. I messed this up both times. At RealB Belden. I've changed my Twitter handle too much, so that's probably my problem. But check us all out. You can, Mason and Nathan's Twitter handles, if you're watching this on YouTube, are on the screen. Make sure you're checking them out as well. Make sure you're checking out slapthesign.com. I haven't even mentioned, well, I think I did once, but I barely mentioned Slap the Sign. We've got some cool things. The Slappy Awards coming out this week and all of that good stuff. So Notre Dame stuff is coming down the pike is what I'm trying to tell you. So check us out. So thanks for sticking with us. Thanks for coming back. Write us a review. Spread the word. All that good stuff that I always say. And until next time, go Irish.